Good evening, I'm Katerina Georgieva. This is CBC Windsor News. Thanks for watching. Tonight, Windsor is seeing a spike in reported assaults allegedly by people who are out on bail, all while the jail struggles with overcrowding. This week, we're looking at the journey to Windsor as we share conversations from our Creating Space event. And remembering a Canadian legend, Gordon Lightfoot, has died and is being honored here in Windsor and across the river in Detroit. Police are investigating after a body was found at the scene of a house fire on Chandler Road near Tecumseh and Drouillard. Arson and major crimes teams are working to figure out the cause of the fire and the, quote, circumstances surrounding the discovery of the body. The fire marshal's office is also looking into this. It happened late last night around 11:30 p.m. Police are looking for witnesses and for any video footage from the area around the time of the fire. As the conversation around bail reform continues across Canada, right here in Windsor, CBC News has learned there's an increase in alleged assaults by people out on bail and peace bonds. That's according to new Stats Canada data. The CBC's Jason Vio brings us the story.
Bail is a polarizing topic in our country right now after an OPP officer was shot and killed in December, allegedly by someone out on bail and who also had a lifetime firearms ban. Here in Windsor, there's new data from Stats Canada that is showing what some are describing as a concerning trend. Let's take a look at those numbers. In 2021, there were 73 assaults involving a weapon or causing bodily harm in Windsor involving someone released on bail or a peace bond. That's compared to just 17 of the same incidents in 2017, showing an increase of 329%. Even minor assaults and other violent crimes were up slightly over that same 5-year period. But one distinction that a local law professor says is important is that these are charges, not convictions.
I think that would help us to perhaps, either substantiate our fear or perhaps alleviate some of the fear that folks may have about recidivism.
Others say this data is incomplete because it doesn't show if overall violent crime is up in the city or not.
I don't know if that's true or not. But if it is, it would be dangerous to glean that violent crime while on bail is independently up.
Across Ontario, there's also an uptick in overall violent crime among people released on bail or peace bonds. And just last week, the province of Ontario says it will spend $112 million to help teams of officers ensure people are compliant with their bail conditions. And one area PC MPP says that's a necessary step to help with a concerning trend.
They're not just, minor incidents where, somebody has not shown up on time or has missed an appointment. These are incidents of assault. They involve harm to people, and we want to prevent that from happening.
But perhaps a bigger issue, Law Prof. Donardo Jones says, is the fact that people out on bail don't always get the social supports they need. That would mean they're less likely to reoffend. He calls this an off-ramp at the bail process. If that doesn't happen, Jones fears that it will be a conveyor belt of people who have been convicted of a crime already on a continuous loop. Jason Vio, CBC News, Windsor.
The Toronto Maple Leafs are set to face off against the Florida Panthers tonight in Game 1 of the second round. It's a major moment for the Leafs, who haven't made it this far in more than a decade. But it's also a big moment for a Windsor-born Panther. CBC video producer Mike Evans brings us that story.
I'm Dave Ekblad. My son is Aaron Ekblad. He's a defenseman for the Florida Panthers. My expectations, probably with a lot of other people, were very, very low. Obviously, you go into it hoping for the best, but certainly it was beyond believable. Being down 3-1, didn't expect to win one, let alone 3 in a row. And then, we had a early lead in the game, and I thought there was a couple of questionable penalties against us that kind of got Boston back in the game, and they took advantage of it. And honestly, I think most people, including myself, thought it was over when they went up 3-2. And Monty came up with a great goal within a minute, and then the overtime goal, just unbelievable.
Bennett gets it. Here's Verhaeghe shooting. He scores! Carter Verhaeghe! 8:35 into overtime. The Panthers have done it. They've stunned the Boston Bruins.
Have you spoken to your son yet?
Yeah, you know what? We exchange texts, and that's typically what we do. You know, it's I have to get up for work in the morning, so you know, by the time he gets out and you know, out of their dressing room, you know, we shoot texts back and forth, and you know, talk about what went on, what's going on, and looking forward to the next series. I have many friends who are Leafs fans, so we're probably going to be testing friendships and relationships, but. No, hopefully it'll all be in good fun. But they have a huge challenge in front of them, just like they did with Boston. So again, we'll hope for the best and see what happens.
Tavares keeps it going, and it's John Tavares behind the net. Coming out in front. John scores! John Tavares! They finally caught lightning in a bottle. And the Maple Leafs have broken the 19-year curse.
My name is Richard Petty. I'm owner of the River Bookshop here in Amherstburg. But prior to doing this, for 14 years, I was the president and chief executive officer of Maple Leaf Sports Entertainment, which was the Raptors and Toronto FC. And importantly for today's discussion, the Toronto Maple Leafs. That was a great game that night. I mean, you go ahead 3-1, but you're now back on the road. Tampa's battle hardened. They've been there so many times, and we were often the casualties of that. But they came through, and three of our wins were on the road overtime. That's pretty intense. It was a long time coming. We haven't been there in 19 years. That's an incredibly long time. But in many of those years, they were capable of doing it, but did not.
It was announced today that Canadians, citizens cannot buy tickets to see Florida Panther home games. What are your thoughts on that?
It's pretty lame. It's really lame. And, you know, it's not the hotbed of hockey down there, so they might be taking a chance they're not going to sell out.
Well, apparently Petty wasn't alone in that line of thinking. Florida now opening ticket sales to Canadian fans. Game 1 is tonight, and that starts at 7, and you can catch it right here on CBC. The bells ringing out at the Mariners Church in Detroit in honor of Gordon Lightfoot. He died last night. Today, the church bells rang out 30 times. Those same bells were used to mark the deaths of the 29 men who died when the Edmund Fitzgerald sank, a moment captured forever in one of Lightfoot's most well-known songs.
In a musty old hole in Detroit, they prayed in the Maritime Sailors' Cathedral. The church bell chimed and it rang 29 times for each man on the Edmund Fitzgerald.
Fans of Gordon Lightfoot, they were asking, are you going to ring the bells? Some people asked if it was going to be 84 times in memorial of his age. And then there were different numbers thrown out. And we came up with 30 since he immemorialized the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald. So the 29 crewmen that were lost, and then one more time for him in memory of his life. So we just thought that that would be appropriate.
Born in Orillia, Ontario in 1938, Lightfoot started in music, singing in a church choir, and had ambitions to become a jazz musician. But fate took him in a different direction. CBC's Deanna Sumanek-Johnson has more on the life and legacy of Gordon Lightfoot.
Remember me, I'm the one who loved you.
By his early 20s, Gordon Lightfoot was already a mainstay on CBC's variety shows.
Let's have a real big hand for Gordy Lightfoot.
In the 1960s, as folk movement gained popularity, so did his songs.
Hear the mighty engines roll.
That song, Early Morning Rain, would also eventually be sung by Elvis Presley.
She's waiting in the whispered vine.
Just one of many American stars who admired the man who stayed in Canada even as his international fame grew.
If you could read my mind, look, what a tale my thoughts could tell. The legend lives on from the Chippewa down.
In 1975, he wrote what he considered his finest song, The Wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald, inspired by the previous year's sinking of a Great Lakes freighter that took down the lives of 29 of its crew members.
With the Northern Iron ore, 26,000 tons more than the Edmund Fitzgerald weighed empty.
When you get the bug of songwriting, it stays with you all the time. You never quite forget about it.
At the 1986 Junos, another famous admirer, Bob Dylan, inducted him into the Canadian Music Hall of Fame.
All right, here he is now, Gordon Lightfoot.
But more than any accolades, what Lightfoot wanted was to continue recording and touring, even after the 2002 abdominal hemorrhage that almost took his life. The road to recovery was long and tough, but Lightfoot's love of the stage kept him going.
Sometimes I think it's a shame. I get feeling better when I'm feeling no pain.
You know, I want to be like, like Wilf Carter and Stompin' Tom and Willie Nelson, and just do it just for as long as is humanly possible.
He actually continued performing well into his 80s, even through other health scares,
Our rendezvous.
and staying Canada's troubadour till the very end,
A key was kept inside a shoe.
capturing life stories, big and small, in timeless melodies. Deanna Sumanak-Johnson, CBC News, Toronto.
Morning glories on my mind.
Lightfoot performed in Windsor many times over the years. Jeff Burrows is the drummer for the Tea Party. He had a chance to meet Lightfoot after a concert at Caesars Windsor.
Blessed was I to get to meet the man a few times, and especially in the Windsor time when he played here, because he's just he was a gentle soul, a super kind man, a genius. When you think about the fact that, you know, he died being one of Drake's best friends, living next door to Drake in Toronto, and there he was as this humble, small-statured man from, you know, Orillia, Ontario, who changed the world in 1974 as a Canadian, topping the charts in the U.S. A huge champion of Canadiana, obviously, but a huge champion of even Windsor and Windsor location. Like he wrote and sent in a letter to have Rosalie Tremblay recognized and have a statue made of her and so on in our community. So, you know, there's not many of those types of gentlemen and gentleladies left in the world who go about their business just perfecting this incredible craft and remain so very humble doing it.
Nice to hear some of those memories. A live look outside there. Another gray scene with more showers expected tonight and into the week as well. Colette Kennedy will be with us after the break with more on your weather. Stay with us. A search is underway for 2 firefighters who were swept away by floodwaters northeast of Quebec City yesterday. They disappeared while helping residents near Bay St. Paul, one of several communities in Quebec dealing with heavy rain and flooding. Some areas have received around 60 millimeters of rain. CBC's Sarah Levitt has more.
Citizens of Bay St. Paul spent today taking stock amid ongoing anxiety. 24 hours ago, heavy rain and flooding from this river that caused quite a bit of damage in the town, including this outdoor bar and patio that was swept from about 2 doors down. In the meantime, the water in just a few hours came up to about waist high at this point, causing a lot of damage. Now, more rain and more worry.
Yeah, it's may still complicated for the next 24, 48 hours. We're looking to have again maybe 20, 30, 40 millimeter again of rain. So it may be complicated, but the level of the river have been going down for the next hour. So we hope it will stay like that.
In Bay St. Paul, more than 500 people were told to leave their homes and were soon taken care of by Red Cross and emergency shelters arranged by the town.
I lost everything. Everything was floating. It was high as I am, the water down there. So, yeah, everything's gone.
Everything feels safe, but yesterday the water was touching the bridge there. Touching. I never seen that in 60 years, and we were all in shock.
Similar scenes played out in other Quebec towns. In Saint-Émilie de l'Énergie, roads were eroded by the rising water. And in Saint-Urbain, the search continued for 2 missing firefighters swept away by the strong current while trying to help 2 others leave their home.
I think that everybody has to be careful. Water can be very powerful. Of course, we saw what happened with the 2 people yesterday, so we have to be very careful.
Now it's about watching the rain and the water levels closely before cleanup can actually begin. Sarah Levitt, CBC News, Bay St. Paul, Quebec.
Colette Kennedy is with us now. Colette, just awful to see the impact of such extreme weather.
Yeah, and we're really seeing different types of extreme weather, you know, as we get into this spring season, different parts of the country. So we have what's happening eastern Ontario, but as we were just seeing, through to southern Quebec. And then if you look at these temperatures, sure, these are lovely to have in Western Canada, Alberta especially, but today Saskatchewan really warming up too. But that pattern is going to hold there for a while, and with that heat, dry conditions and some winds, that's not helping with the situation there with the grass and some forest fires that are burning kind of early in the season. So various things that are going on, and we know what's going on in our neck of the woods, which is this intermittent wet weather and the gray skies too. So the temperatures, they look like this, really not very impressive. And in fact, Goderich with that 2, Kitchener with 2, those are areas where, yeah, it's not necessarily just showers tonight, a little bit of snow mixing in, not accumulating, but still, that's something to see in early May, right? And then if you look at the winds here and you notice the coloration back into Michigan, that's where the stronger gusts are right now. So they're much lighter over towards the north and to the east, but their sustained winds are strong, and we've had some gusts here, 40 kilometers an hour. Earlier, they were up closer to 50 for Windsor, and more of this will be poking its nose in and pushing those winds up a little bit stronger as we go into those evening hours. There's that rotation around the area of low pressure and these bands of rain, at times heavier, and this indeed is some of that light snowfall that's mixing in there in the kind of the core of that low where those colder temperatures are. A few lightning strikes in here as well. Of course, don't need any more rainfall into southern Quebec, and yet it continues. This is really still slow. We can kind of check in. I showed you this graphic yesterday. I've updated it for today. We're still going to be seeing that transfer of energy, and it's finally going to be releasing and moving away the core of this storm. So it gets better. We'll see less and less of the showers into Wednesday, and then just becoming some isolated showers into Thursday. In fact, I've almost taken it out of the forecast, just about a 20-30% chance for southwestern Ontario by the time we get there into Thursday and Friday, and the weekend looking really good. So the rainfall accumulation additional that we're talking about, not much here, you know, 3 to maybe 5-6 millimeters. It gets a little more significant over towards parts of eastern Ontario. Evening temperature sitting there right around that 5, overnight 4. Not showers continuously, but off and on. 5 degrees tomorrow morning, and we will do a little bit better from there into the afternoon. We'll get up to 12 degrees, and then you see that improvement. Slight chance of mostly what would be isolated showers at the end of the week here. That temperature profile bumping up, everything really improving. And by the way, tonight, sundown, 8:33 for Windsor.
Hey, there you go. Thanks for that, Colette.
You're welcome.
When we come back, we have more stories of immigration to share with you. Stay with us. The federal government has ended evacuation flights out of war-torn Sudan. The ongoing fighting has made them too dangerous. There are more than 200 Canadians still in Sudan, and efforts are continuing to get them out over land and by sea.
Canadians could consider going to Port Sudan. We have a team right now of armed forces along with key diplomats that are there to make sure to understand a bit more the situation on the ground.
Just so I'm clear, we have Canadian soldiers in Port Sudan right now?
We have armed forces in Port Sudan as we speak.
That's Foreign Affairs Minister Mélanie Joly confirming there are Canadian armed forces on the ground in Sudan. Joly is working with officials from other governments to organize humanitarian aid for Sudan, and that includes attempting to open a humanitarian corridor to help people leave. At our recent Creating Space event, we wanted to create space for more people to share their immigration stories with us and to tell us about the traditions they've held on to. Tonight, I want you to meet Yanette Triana. Yanette immigrated to Canada from Cuba. That's because she fell in love with a Canadian, married him, and then came to Windsor 4 years ago. Here's what the transition was like for her.
Well, definitely very difficult. Leaving your family, your friends, your work, coming to another country where your language is not the same, where the culture is very different, is tough. When you come and you don't have nobody except your husband, which is no from my culture. But I found Canada and Windsor specific very welcome. It's a big community with so many multicultural that you can feel the warmth here in Windsor. So now it's okay, now I'm great, but at the beginning was struggling. I miss a lot my home, my family, and the winter definitely is a big difference. Cuba is very warm, 30 degrees all the time. Here is so cold, not used to the cold, so it's tough. Something that really helped me is going to our nightclub, South Sudan. Like every Friday or Saturday, we go and the community come together and we dance, which is something that we love to do back home.
It started small, but it has grown a lot. A gardening project involving some seniors in New Brunswick has expanded into the community, nurturing people's physical and mental well-being. Have a look.
The seniors planted over 1,100 seeds. And so, of course, we will use what we can for the garden, but the rest we let them come up, and we repot them, and then we give those all away. So to people in the food banks that come, people who might we know in our community, we give some away to the nursing homes to start for their gardens, and anybody can have access to them. In fact, last year we sat a table out and said, free tomatoes, free cucumbers, plants. The first year when it started, we got funding from what was called the Healthy Seniors Pilot Project. And that was a good chunk of change. So it allowed us to build an accessible garden for seniors. That was the goal.
There's raised beds so that any senior that's having difficulties, in maybe bending over to the ground to plant them or to nourish them, it allows them to use the raised beds. And also anyone is in a wheelchair.
So we've produced about 1,500 pounds of food, between 12 and 1,500 pounds of food in the last 3 years, just in this little, 50 by 60 garden.
Oh, this year I bring from Portugal some seeds. Last summer, a friend of mine bring over. Go on vacation, he bring over. I say, bring seeds for me, this.
3 reasons I garden. And teach gardening is to feed people, to help with habitat regeneration, and to also help heal hearts. So, for that emotional, mental, spiritual part that we get from connecting with soil and good soil in the earth and each other.
You get to know all these people, and some of them are very experienced gardeners, and you learn a lot from them. I really enjoy watching things being planted and then watching them grow and then reaping the benefits.
Oh, yeah, I eat every year. Oh, I love it.
And that is it for CBC Windsor News. For news anytime, go to our website, cbc.ca/Windsor, and you can also find us on Facebook and Instagram. Thanks for watching. Have a good night.